Changing out a Livewell pump in your boat isn't that hard to do, and it won't even take that much time depending on how your boat's set up back here. So let's go ahead and get started. So here in the back compartment of the boat, my pumps and the pumps on a lot of boats are up here underneath this panel. So if you don't have all the stuff in the way, it's pretty easy to get to. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take this Raptor pump out and this battery out. Okay, so now that I've got this panel removed, this pump right here, you can see I've already replaced these two over here before. These two, this pump and the one below it down here, you can't really see, are the original pumps. So this one right here is the one that's making noise that I want to replace. So the first thing I'm going to do is loosen up this hose clamp. So just take a screwdriver or a nut driver and loosen that up. Yeah, I cheated, it was already a little loose. But so once you get that loose, just pull it up, and I kind of snug it up just so it stays up here out of the way. And also, if you leave it on the hose, you don't have to remember to put it back on afterwards. So the next thing you want to do is take a screwdriver and just pry up. So these are the old original hoses, so they're kind of hard. And if it's winter, if it's cold, you can take a blow dryer and just warm the hose up a little bit. That might help it come off a little easier. Even in the summer, just to warm it up might help it come off easier. Typically, you can just take a screwdriver and kind of pry it around, and a little bit bigger one works a little better. And I do want to go ahead and try to break this hose loose a little bit while it's still mounted to the boat. It's a little easier to work on and maneuver around with on the screwdriver. So the next thing is I want to go ahead and cut off these wires. So these ones I've already cut, but make sure your power's turned off. You don't want to short out the battery, of course. And you want to make sure you don't lose the other end. So actually these are the wires. So these are the other end. Just make sure those don't fall down. So now let's go ahead and hop up into the boat and work on the inside of the Livewell. So if your pump has one of these little screens on it, you can just twist this off. So once you twist that off, you can just take a channel locks and loosen this nut up. And this one's already broke loose, of course, but you get the idea. And just twist that the rest of the way off once you get it loose. Okay, so now we should be done on the disassembly on the inside of the Livewell. Okay, so now that we've got that nut off on the inside of the Livewell, you can just take this pump and pull it out. Okay, so then just, grab the hose and the pump and pull it off. You don't want to put too much force though on these other fittings on the other end of this hose. You don't want to break those off. It's going to make your nice simple pump job a lot harder. You're going to have to get more parts. So there we go, that came off pretty easy. So then all this extra sealant that's around your Livewell pump hole, you just want to get as much of that off as you can. So now we're finally ready to start working with our new pump. You can buy these from any local boat shop pretty well. You can buy them online too, but I always like to support the local places when I can. Basically, I'm going to copy the length of the threads on this pump, and I'm going to copy that onto this pump. So I just need to cut this off. So it doesn't have to be exact, and you're better off going long than short. So then just take a saw and cut off your pump. Okay, so now I got that cut off. I just like to clean up this edge, get some of these burrs, these little plastic frails off of here. Get all the junk out of there. So the next step on this pump is deciding if you want a straight end or a curved end, 90-degree end. So this one, as you could, just look at your old pump, this one was a straight end. So that's what I'm gonna use. So then if yours is the cartridge pump and the cartridge isn't already in it, just pop that cartridge into place. And if you needed to replace your pump and you just wanted to replace the cartridge, this you would just keep in the boat and you would just replace this motor part. So now I'm ready to go ahead and install this pump in the boat. So I'm gonna put sealant on two places. I'm gonna put it right here on this end that goes into the Livewell. You wanna make sure that's good and sealed. I'm also gonna put just a little bit right here on this end that goes to the hose, just to help that seal. That hose is getting kind of dried up, so just wipe that around nice and even. And you just want to make sure that it gets on this surface right here that's going to mate up with the outside of that Livewell. So now I've got a nice bead of sealant on there, and that'll squish out into a nice flat piece once I push that into the Livewell hole. So now I'm ready to go ahead and put this on the hose. Okay, that slid on pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this into the Livewell hole, and I might have to pull this down a little bit, it feels like. Right, it's not the exact same pump, so everything doesn't line up perfect. Okay, So now I want to slide this hose clamp back down, and you want this hose clamp to be positioned over the top of those two barbs I was just talking about. Make sure that's good and snug. Okay, that's not going anywhere. Next, let's go back in the Livewell. So now I'm back up in the Livewell. I've got a good bead of sealant on this nut that goes on this side of the pump. So we'll just thread that on there. So now that's started. I'm just going to take a little bit of sealant and put some on the threads. And that'll pretty well work itself in. But you don't want, water leaking through those threads either. Get rid of that excess. Make sure that's tight, but remember, these are just plastic threads. You don't want to make it too tight or they will, pop off or strip out. So I'm going to leave that just like that. That looks pretty good. So now I've got a new cover for the front side of this pump, and the reason I got a new one is just the threads on this one aren't the same as the old pump, so the one for the old pump doesn't fit. So for these electrical connections in the bottom of the boat, I like to use these crimp connectors with the heat shrink built in. I just think they seal better than the like a regular crimp connection with a heat shrink over the top of it. Using these is pretty simple. Basically just need to strip both ends of your wires. So now that all our wires are stripped, just connect the black to the black and the brown to the brown. And if for some reason your wire colors are different, the brown is the positive and the black should be the negative. But, it's always a good idea to double check with a multimeter to make sure that is actually the case. So you want to twist the ends of your wires just to help keep them all together. So then take your crimper, mine's on the back side of my wire strippers here. Stick the wire in and then crimp it down. Then do the other side. So now before we get too carried away with everything, let's turn on the switch and make sure that it actually pumps. So hopefully we'll hear a buzzing. Circulate should be starboard. Yep, there it is. Perfect, so now let's go ahead and melt that heat shrink. So using this heat shrink's pretty simple. Basically you just take a lighter and melt the ends of this. It'd be better if these wires spread apart a little further. You don't want to melt anything else, of course. And you also want to be careful that you don't get these too hot. Getting them too hot, they don't really shrink up right either. You might have to flip it over. You want to get all sides good and even. So that one should be good to go. So basically just repeat this for the other connector here. So now this pump is good to go. Basically, I just need to put this compartment back together, put all these panels back in to cover everything up and hook up, everything I disconnected to get there, and I'll be ready to go. And you do want to give that sealant some time to make sure that it does set up all the way before you get it wet or it won't cure properly, but then you're good to go. So thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.